This particular webinar is going to talk about some of the different DDoS protections, how to go through and validate those critical steps in preventing downtime. I've been wanting to do a session with Alon for a while now. Alon, I appreciate the fact that we finally get this time together. I know you've been in cybersecurity and DDoS for quite a long time. You've worked on defensive and offensive sides. Any comments as to your shift to offensive, specifically for DDoS?
Thank you, Brian. Before I'm going to answer that, I'm so happy we got the chance to host this series of webinars. It's going to be very interesting. I'll answer your question and then I'm going to say a few words. So when I was working on the defense side, I come to a realization that if you want to do a good defense, you must go through also to the offense side. You need to know how the attacker is thinking in order to make your defenses much better and much resilient. To those of you who viewers the webinar, that Brian is our sales director of Macebolt in the USA. Brian, you got like more than 2 decades of cybersecurity experience and networks design, as well as certified CISSP. That's amazing.
Yes.
I just say, by the way, I'm always happy to see high technical professionals as yourself moving to the other side, to the sales side.
Ah,
So
the dark side.
yeah, the dark side. Brian, by the way, you worked in the past in major telecom companies and big enterprise organizations, right? As basically doing almost everything related to networks and cyber acquisitions. Can you share with us some interesting moments or any moment that got you to the realization that DDoS is still a rising threat, or should I say, an old new threat in this?
I'll give a funny example. I've been at this long enough that I talked to a university a long time ago. As a carrier, we were starting to provide DDoS services and stuff. And guy actually told me, he's like, I don't think DDoS is a problem. I don't believe DDoS is a
Yeah.
problem. And I was like, that's only because you haven't been hit yet that you don't think it's a problem. And he really wasn't doing much about it. But my funny aspect of that is I told him I've never seen a baby pigeon, but they exist. So
It's only a matter of time.
yeah.
I can share the same thought on that. I think the DDoS security area was neglected for the past decade and allowed the attackers to develop more sophisticated attacks while the defenses, how can I say it, good defenses, but the way we use that is not the best way.
That certainly speaks to why I made transition to where I'm at now. Something new, how we are approaching the problem has changed. And for me, that was very interesting and very compelling.
Amazing. I want to read you something I wrote for this slide. Early in 2025, we witnessed DDoS attacks getting to sometimes rates of millions, 5 million requests per second. We said back in early 2025, this will indicate a trend toward more massive and sophisticated attacks. Why? Because we see a lot of AI-based bots leveraging into very high, massive, and sophisticated attacks that are able to penetrate defenses. If you can look on the table here, we see 2020 until 2025, we see a huge rise of DDoS attacks. Some of them reported, others that were not reported, we cannot know. And then 6 days ago, we witnessed the largest DDoS attack reported by Cloudflare, resulting at 7.2 billion requests per second. That's a huge number. I don't think we noticed that kind of attack, or I would say rate of attack in the past. Any
Yeah.
comments on that, Brian?
Whenever I see an attack of that scale or any one of those headlines, anyone doing an attack of that scale is not trying to evade defenses. They're not trying to trick a mitigation provider or anything like that. Those are advertisements for these threat actors or the people that have built these botnets. They go through and say, look at what we're capable of doing. It's bragging rights that they get to have.
Saying those attacks are not meant to break the defenses or the websites. It's only a show off.
They're showing off. There's an 1111 bot, a new botnet, Mirai variation that throughout this year, you could watch stories of 10,000 different infected devices, 20,000 infected devices. And really just a couple of weeks ago, there was announcements that it had gotten up to like 80,000. So it's not surprising to me that the timing of that attack was we've built this really powerful botnet. Oh, look what we can do. What worries me more is the low and slow attacks.
Right.
And
Why is
those,
that? Let's touch
yeah,
that. So, low and slow attack. Why are they more deadliest sometimes than those high volumetric attacks? What makes them more sophisticated or more dangerous to organizations?
they can evade the defenses. That's their entire goal, is to go through and not try to show off. It's how can I go through and get past these various layers of defenses and not have them detect me so that I can still create damage. And that makes them more scary to me. Like they're hiding.
Got it. So basically, if I'll say it in different words, those big massive attacks, besides the fact they're advertisements and show off, their intent to overwhelm the pipe, the bandwidth, right? And those slow and low attacks meant to evade the detection of the DDoS protections, go under the radar and penetrate organizations and trying to cause real disruptions on a specific target. Like if that is a main target in the network, like a firewall or a load balancer, it means game over for the entire organization, not
Right.
only for that specific server.
Correct.
I understand why I said it's more scary or more, let's say we need to worry about that a bit more. One point I wanted to mention about these massive attacks that we've seen, usually the common ground of these attacks, they are the style of carpet bombing. Okay, they're trying to attack multiple attack vectors in multiple ways. But not only that, they were able to send the floods on multiple ports, 10 of thousands of ports for each target they were attacking. Think of it like, let's say I have a house in a neighborhood, I have a road, or let's say one path to that house to get with my car. And suddenly I discovered tens or 100s or 200s different paths to this house. In each path, I have a lot of cars. That is basically what, like a small analogy.
Doesn't matter how you reroute it, it's blocked over there too.
Hopefully, yeah.
The other thing, I'll make a statement on this one. Q1 of this year, there's been a huge spike, but I think that there's geopolitical tensions that probably fuel this as well. There's geopolitical tensions that are fueling it, but there's also been a significant change in the technology that makes it easier for the bad actors to do it. So it's easier and they have incentive to do it.
Maybe those massive attacks are actually state-sponsored attacks, you know?
I would not be surprised at all if they're advertising to someone that's going to pay them, and that could be a state-sponsored attack.
Yeah. Okay. So moving forward, let's discuss some examples of DDoS protection that we know. We just choose randomly specific DDoS protection vendors. By the way, next webinars, we can discuss others if we have specific requests, but those specifically some DDoS protection vendors that we kept on getting questions from customers and followers, how they work. We want to have a high-level explanation of what they provide, each one, what it provides, and how exactly it works for us as users and as companies that want to protect our sensitive data and online services. Right. Before we go over to the table, let's look just on the flow of the traffic. On the left side, we see the internet side. We see the cloud-based DDoS protections. We got CDNs and scrubbing centers. By the way, Brian, maybe that's the point to mention. Why do we call this CDN DDoS protection? Because CDN is not specifically for DDoS protection, right? It's a content delivery network. Why do we refer that still as a DDoS protection?
One of the things I find interesting is when I mentioned a long time ago when I started, the carriers didn't necessarily have an incentive to stop a DDoS attack because they sold bandwidth. If a DDoS attack is using more bandwidth, they actually had an incentive to allow that traffic because they could sell you more bandwidth. On-premise type people, obviously those they're trying to protect, but you throw a big bandwidth type attack at that, then you've already consumed the pipe. I think CDN providers did that as self-preservation. They had to build DDoS defenses to help them, and it became a really good, it is a good solution. Cloud solution
100%.
helps protect the data center, but I think there was some self-preservation in the reason that these spun up.
No, 100%. That's exactly what happens. Those content delivery network providers suddenly find themselves in the middle of defending their own networks because someone want to attack their customers. So they
Yes,
start to upgrade their networks, add more sophisticated DDoS protection to the networks, WAFs, dedicated rule sets. And they said, okay, we got into the business of DDoS protection for our networks. Let's offer that to our customers. This is,
yeah,
this is why we call it a CDN protection, but actually you can think about it like taking a WAF or a firewall on the cloud with a DNS conversion of QDN, right? They're not publishing the organization's IPs, but only the domain names through their infrastructure. Following that, we got a scrub and center protection, which is actually publishing the IP address range of the customer they're protecting, like a BGP or a GRE connection. If you go further to the right, we see the on-prem solution. So we see here a dedicated DDoS protection device. Obviously, we see firewalls, IPS, load balancers, and our application firewalls. Those are the main, I would say, common basic protections that we are aware of when we look on enterprise organizations. Some of them have less, some of them have a bit more with small tweaks, but those are the main functions over here. It's a hybrid solution based on cloud protection and on-prem protection.
each of these layers
Yeah,
is providing a specific function, such as the scrubbing center really, they're good at blocking those volumetrics layer 3, 4 type attacks.
right,
But it's really a combination of these for a customer to have a thorough protection. You want good layer 7 protection, that's your cloud WAF. Most people end up with a hybrid solution where they've got all three of these different layers, or could have more. Is
right,
that an accurate way to go through? And they exist because they serve a certain function.
right. Even though if you got those protections, it doesn't mean you are using that the best. There are some best practices, guideline rules, how to use each one and how to use it in a combination with the other one. Okay. So, for example, let's say I have a scrubbing center and a WAF. I know that the scrubbing center most likely will not block the most sophisticated HTTPS bots, right?
Right.
Then again, if I'm adding a CDN to the picture, Cloud WAF, it can block. But if the attacker is going to attack my IP, basically bypassing my CDN, right? You want to have a solution for that as well. There are a lot of combinations you can add. We will talk about that in a different
Yep.
webinar, but just for
Yeah,
now,
just touching on it for now.
just to understand what's going on. What do I have available? So we prepared a small, nice table of 3 DDoS protection vendors, Radware, Akamai, and Cloudflare. I'll just say upfront, I used to be working for Radware in the past. I'm an ex-Radware, excellent company. I love it, love the products. So I'll start with Radware. They do have a cloud WAF protection for their customers based on DNS diversion and a scrubbing center service based on BGP advertising and a GRE. Back in the days, it was using a security DAM infrastructure. It's like a different company they work with or own it. They also have on-prem solutions for DDoS protection, such as the Defense Pro and the RPOL with the WAF and other possibilities to enable some anti-DDoS on load balancers, on the Alton, a lot of stuff. It's very cool. If you know everything and work with all of the types of services and products they provide, you can get yourself a decent, even good, very good DDoS protection service. You want to move on with Akamai and Cloudflare?
Yeah, I'll simply comment that Radware has that on-prem solution. Just I think their history as a company, that's where they started. So they grew
Right.
the other direction. Yeah.
Akamai got also a Cloud WAF solution or kind of CDN based in Scrub Center service. The Scrub Center, by the way, through Prolexics. They own this company that did this. They provide Scrub Center solution mitigation for their customers, but they don't have a dedicated on-prem product, right? You might as well go with Akamai, buy and use all of their cloud-based solutions. Maybe that's good enough for your organizations. If not, and you want to have some on-prem solution, you would consider other companies, not only Radware, by the way. There are other types of DDoS protection solutions. Companies such as Arbor, F5 is amazing. But again, that's another webinar. And then we got Cloudflare, which is pretty much, I would say, very popular these days with their Cloud WAF and Scrub Center. By the way, the Scrub Center is through Magic Transit. They
Mhm.
purchased this company, I think, a year and a half ago, something like that. Now they provide a comprehensive solution. They also got an on-prem, not a protection device, but some kind of a relay device. So it's when it senses traffic gets in, it directed to the cloud and then get it back. That's a nice thing, nice tool to look, but they don't offer an actual DDoS protection device on-prem. Any
And
comments about this table?
before we move on to the
Yeah,
next slide, we got 12 minutes left. And before we move on to the next one, I'll just make a comment that even if you have all three of these, default configurations may not necessarily be the exact fit for you. One of the things that we talk about all the time is that these constantly need to be fine-tuned and adjusted based on your environment, based on what's going on within your environment or changes within the threats that are out there and stuff like that. Things can change. Just because you have all three of these doesn't necessarily mean you are protected.
100%. Good. I hope you have enough time that we also give some time for questions from the audience. But before we do that, let's continue to the last slide we prepared.
Mhm.
Basically, what you want to say here is that when you do have a DDoS protection services, you want to make sure that you're protecting your entire network, not only the crown jewels or the more, important applications of your network. The reason for that is you need to consider the entire components of a network. So if we're looking again in this topology, we are saying, hey, we got in this case, in this specific organization, a hybrid solution of cloud-based, in this case, just for an example, it's an AWS deployment and an on-prem deployment. We got here a mobile banking app, which is talking to an API service gateway, which sends API requests to a database hosted on-prem because they got all the sensitive information. Many organizations don't want to put their customers' sensitive information on the cloud, but they need this API gateway over here to talk with this server over here to get the data. Then we got all the security components on the way. We got the WAF to protect web applications. We got some IPS going on, firewalls, on-premise DDoS protection device. We mentioned earlier, it could be whatever, right? Some organizations have multiple types of vendors over here. Then we got the cloud-based solution protections. So let's think what will happen, let's say, if my DDoS protection device over here has a policy to protect only the WAF, only the web application, but it does not protect my database from DDoS attacks. I don't know why, maybe they forgot it or not, but it's something that we saw in the past, right? So this is not an actual application that if you log in from the internet, you will see something. It's just a database server, you can access it, and it gets API requests from an API gateway.
Quick comment. That's not uncommon. Typically, when we come
Right.
into an organization, we will get into finding this is the way we think we're set up, but then we find maybe that, okay, these particular ranges are not protected or is not going through the layer like you thought it would. We're showing that and finding that just because people think they've got something configured a particular way, that it's not. So maybe that database server was built after policies were put into that CPE appliance or whatever the reason is. For some reason or other, it was left out. We do find that.
I can give you multiple examples like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
I saw in the past, big
Yeah.
organizations. If you have some time after we finish this
Maybe
slide.
next one. Yeah.
So let's say now I got an attacker coming in, right? They're able to send attacks being blocked by the AWS Shield or any kind of CloudFront protection of AWS, not being blocked by the cloud protection we have over here. Get into the DDoS mitigation device, which is able to block some of the attacks, but it's not configured to protect the database server, as was discussed earlier. So what will be the next step? Boom, we got the attack reaching to the firewall. Now, what happens to the firewall when it gets SYN flood or HTTPS flood? What's going on behind the scene? Basically, how firewall works. They have this connection table that usually use the RAM resources you align to it. Once you get hit with a lot of requests during time that keeps the connection open, TCP connection open, think about it. Every request, every SYN packet, or every opening a connection of HTTP request takes a line in the table, takes space of your RAM, space in the connection table of the firewall. Then it ramp up until eventually the firewall goes down. When I say go down, doesn't necessarily mean restart or something like that. It means it doesn't have any space left for legitimate request.
Yeah.
And when this thing happen, it's like game over. The entire organization cannot function. Even the cloud component of AWS cannot function because now they don't have the connection with the on-prem
Well,
database.
based on this, even those web applications that are behind that firewall, everything behind that firewall is now down.
Everything
Yeah,
down.
so giving a quick example of this, and I'll look and see if we have any questions, but if it's a mobile banking app and I'm going in and checking, I want to see what my checking account balance is. I'm bringing up my mobile app and the cloud service is providing the mobile app and all the graphics and everything that I see on my device. But then I go to check my balance and it shows me zero because it can't access that database
Oh my
server.
God. I
And
see zero. Wow.
so I bring that up because you look at some of the complaints when these DDoS attacks happens on banks and the number of people on social media that are like, I'm checking my balance and it says zero. I better have my money. You want to mess with somebody, you go through and show them that their money doesn't exist anymore. It causes a lot of complaints because people don't necessarily understand that this is what's happening. It's an API call on the back end that just can't get a balance, so it doesn't know what to show you. It shows you zero.
Yeah, also think about social media networks. Like we just had in March a massive attack on X.
Yeah.
Elon Musk come and say, listen, we are facing a problem. We don't know when it's going to be resolved. Eventually, they had to turn to Cloudflare to protect them, to provide some more sophisticated challenges from bot attacks.
Yeah.
I don't
So
know what happened behind the scene deeply, but the fact Elon Musk himself confirmed widely, hey, we got a problem. We're facing a massive DDoS attack, and they had to pay some third party to protect them. It says a lot. It says a lot about disruptions
make
and
a
online availability.
quick comment, and then I'll look and see what kind of questions we have because we're only about 4 minutes left on the slotted
Yeah,
time. You mentioned X, so even the biggest names out there get taken down from DDoS attacks. They have the best defenses that are out there. One of the things, and we'll talk in future webinars and stuff like that, is that you've got to be testing this all the time. This is not something that you can set it and forget it. If you're not testing it, you're vulnerable. And that's one of the things that I want people to take away. Yes, I want them to understand what are the different protection layers, what can they do, what can it mean if you miss one, stuff like that. But this is not something that can sit out there and not be tested. My recommendation is test as much as you possibly can because you need to know where you're vulnerable. And if it's working like you expect, it's going to work.
I'll just say that DDoS is a real threat. A lot of organizations now understand it. And yes, also with DDoS, you need to take a proactive approach, test it all the time, and make sure you're 100% protected or close to
Yeah.
that.
So one of the questions here looking at, so working with multiple vendors and saying, best practices and stuff for an incident is happening, what's the escalation path, and what's the best practice for that? To your point with the chart having multiple vendors, so I can understand that question. I will say that I was talking to someone recently that said that they were suffering from an attack. The cloud provider said they detected it and they had stopped it, but there was still enough traffic making it through that an on-premise device says, oh, look, I detected it, but enough traffic made it through, made it to an on-premise WAF that had a misconfiguration and took everything down, even though those other layers had done it. So that really does get into the configuration aspects of it and testing them ahead of time. But it also points to an issue, and I think what the concern with this question is that if you're under attack, it's very hard to know what type of an attack was it, what type of an attack is it, which one of my protection layers should have stopped it, who do I open a ticket with?
Depends how much visibility you got.
Yeah.
Very much
It,
depends on that as
yeah,
well.
if you know it's a layer 7, great, you can go to your cloud WAF provider or whatever. You've really got to get into maybe understanding what's going on in that visibility of your network and traffic in order to be able to understand it, and then you got to know. But if you've got 3 different providers, you got to figure that out before you go to them. Or you open a ticket with all 3 of them and say, I'm being hit, can someone please help me?
Yeah, that reminds me, many years ago, I was working in a scrub and center service, and it was the first time I encountered a real live HTTPS flood. The customer was on the line, said, I'm being attacked. The website went down. I didn't see nothing. I'm a scrub and center provider. I didn't see nothing on my systems. And eventually, when we investigated deeper and deeper, we realized it was an HTTPS flood. It wasn't massive attack. It was very low rate attack, but it was so destructive, it brought down the entire organization.
Yeah.
So it very much depends how much visibility you.
Yeah, we are here at the end. I want to make sure that any questions that we have that we didn't get to, we will respond and make sure that we are reaching out and answering those questions.
We will publish soon. We have another webinar about specifically best practices, what to do. We might extend it even to 2 webinars, depends on the time and effort we're going to invest in that. So stay tuned, register to the next webinar. It's going to be very interesting and very informative, technically.
Yes, absolutely. But we appreciate everyone joining today. And if you feel free to reach out to either one of us if you have questions or you have things that you want to know, even outside of this, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn or wherever you can find us.
And Brian, big respect to be with you here today, and looking forward to the next session.
Absolutely. Been looking forward to this for a while. So thanks,
Okay.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone.